Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Dispatch Podcast here on Your Experience Guide. I'm Scott.
I'm Steve.
And we're going to be talking about Alton Towers and did they improve in 2024? So, straight over to you, mate. Did they improve in 2024?
I think in some ways they definitely did improve, and I think in other ways they have some room for improvement. So I think it's a combination of stuff has definitely changed for the better, but there is stuff that needs to be improved upon. So should we elaborate?
Yes, I think firstly we need to look at things like ride availability.
Yes.
They had some serious issues with that throughout the season. And I think the two of them that really stick in my mind are obviously Hex, which did eventually open, but also then you've got Skyride, which for me is a massive problem when you've got that down all season. And then when the monorail's faulty for most of the season, it's a real issue.
Yeah, like we've had monorail issues almost every visit we've been on, and it's quite a long hike to the park from the car park. So the way the park's designed, they like to make that little bit of magic. You're going on an adventure on the monorail to get to the park entrance. Totally get that, but when it's down, yeah, it's especially imagine if you're a family with like pushchairs, and it's a long way to get to the theme park from there. So I think that is something you need to look into and try and get the reliability up on that. But it's not just the monorail, like he's mentioned the Skyride as well, which also affects families more than anyone else with buggies because it's a long walk.
I think when you've got that situation where it's like you've parked by Galactica or further back and then they say that the monorail's closed, so then you've got that big long walk to the park entrance, and then you're like thinking, oh, I'm a little bit tired here, or if you've got a buggy or if you've got small kids that will not want to walk that far in that amount of time straight away. And then you get in the park and you've got no Skyride, and then add to that the staggered opening and you've not got everything open that's at the front of the park. It's just like walking after walking after walking, which is all right if you're fit and healthy, but for people that have got small kids in pushchairs, small kids that don't want to walk far, or people in wheelchairs or who just struggle to walk generally, it's an issue.
Well, I think one of the common things, particularly relating to Skyride, is that the map makes it look like 13 is next to Galactica.
Yes.
And the amount of people I've seen with buggies, and there is a sign that says do not go down into the valley with your buggy, but the amount of times I've seen people carrying like pushchairs and stuff down in the gardens just because the map makes it look like that's the way to go.
It's all good going down, but going it back up with that buggy is going to be an issue.
Yeah, so it is quicker to go around. Often, I tend not to go down into the valley if I'm trying to get to the other side. I tend to go towards the Haunted Hollow, use that, or you can go by the old greenhouse, which cuts off quite a bit as well.
Which way is that?
It's just before the Haunted Hollow.
Okay.
We've been down there and you said I was taking you to Narnia, but it was actually quite quick.
Some of Stephen's routes around towers are interesting, let's say. He'll be like, I know this really good route, and then you walk in and it's like, oh, there's Stoke-on-Trent.
But also the ride that you're trying to get to.
Yeah, true. So did they improve in 2024? That is the question, because obviously in 2022 and 2023, they took a lot of stick for ride availability, for lack of investment, for the retro squad, and opening hours, pricing, catering. Yeah. They took a lot of stick, and I think it's the first time I've been an enthusiast where I've seen Alton Towers getting that much stick. Yeah. Because normally, in the old days, you go back to like 10 or 15 years ago, you'd go on like an Alton Towers fan forum and they'd be like, I got on one ride all day, but I had the best day ever. Whereas now, everyone gets angry very quickly.
I've been on no rides today. Yeah, had the worst day ever. No, I don't think anyone's had it quite that bad. Like, you'd have to be very unlucky to end up with not doing any rides at all. I do think that, like Hex, for instance, like we were promised Hex at the beginning of the year, and that being shut. Like again, they've worked really hard to try and get Hex operational. The intention was to have it ready, and they tried multiple times. And I know that people in about June time heard it testing, and then obviously the issue they're having reoccurred again before they got to open it. So I think they just decided to get Vekoma in and completely redesign the ride experience with Vekoma to improve its reliability. It seems to have worked. When I did it, they actually got it open only for a few weeks, but they still got it open, which is really good.
Well, it's better than not opening.
Exactly, and they got it open for Scarefest, which, to be fair, that ride is a spooky ride, so I thought it was a really good offering for Scarefest. But it's not just that though, even though they've tried really hard to get Hex open, I believe the reliability of the other rides as well can be a little bit hit and miss.
It's been really bad. It's like we've been quite lucky, I think. Like we've done a lot of Towers visits this year and a lot of videos, and whether it's just been us or we've had Mark or we've had Matt or Jimmy or whoever's been with us, we've generally had really good luck. But a lot of people, when you go on Twitter, when you go on Facebook or any other platforms, are just constantly posting screenshots of this ride's closed, this ride's closed, this. And the thing is, Pleasure Beach, moving away from Towers, Pleasure Beach get a lot of stick for this, whereas I think still the subject of it is still missed at Towers and people kind of forgive them. And I think that is now ending. I think people are getting really annoyed with it, and it isn't good enough, but there is a reason for it. And I think that I know a lot of people will always drop the blame on someone like Bianca's doorstep, whereas I don't think it's Bianca's fault. I feel like it's the people above her that have probably... The issue is, like, I think I've said this in the Nemesis video, Bianca's come into Towers, she's got a lot of good ideas, she's done a lot of good stuff, she's put herself as the face of Alton Towers on social media, which I think immediately gives her a problem because people will just blame her. It's the same with Amanda Thompson. It's like, I'm not saying Amanda's faultless, but because she is like, I'm the face of Pleasure Beach on Twitter, everyone blames every decision on her, when it's like, there is directors and there's middle management that make these decisions, or there's people, not in Pleasure Beach's case, but in Towers' case, there is people above Bianca who are saying, this is your budget, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And because she's now the face of Alton Towers on social, people will drop the blame on her doorstep, and I don't think it's fair. She's done a lot of good.
I think that it did make a few odd choices of closing like Spinball to add a single rider queue in season was a bit bizarre. I probably would have just waited for winter. I know that was probably due to manpower, because over winter you have quite a short period to get everything done, but I still think they probably should have got some contractors in to kind of do that over winter. But the other side of it also is it's not always necessarily the park's fault for downtime, because as I've said to you many a times, 9 times out of 10 on Rita, it's the guest that's gone on board with loose items in the pocket. If you get coins, just a 2p coin going in the catch car can cause a lot of damage to Rita, so it will shut down if anything comes off and falls into that catch car. So. But that's then you've got to wait for the engineers to get there, then do the full inspection, and then the test cycles afterwards. You've got an hour downtime just because someone didn't zip the pockets or bring loose items on. And that is becoming an increasing problem on Rita. I'll be honest, I think the only way you're going to get around that is by adding metal detectors on it.
I think that's the way we're going to go.
I do think that's the only way you're going to increase the reliability of Rita, because it is literally... Like, obviously you do occasionally get downtime, but it's rare. It is 9 times out of 10 loose items, phones. And don't take your phone on Rita, because we'll be handing it back to you in like, there's a bit, there's a bit, it won't survive.
I think the thing for me is, I think Alton Towers did improve this year. I think it was more of an enjoyable day out than it used to be. The staff have been generally a lot happier and a lot more engaging. I think it's just been a nicer place to visit, but it isn't without its issues. But I think that Alton Towers is seen as the premier theme park resort destination in the UK. And I feel like they need to be at a higher standard than they currently are, but they are heading in the right direction. But if Merlin are going to start cutting staffing, ride hours and budgets everywhere, we're just going to fall back into the rabbit hole where they were a couple of years ago. And a big issue in the park is catering, because it is awful, and that has not improved at all.
Okay, so the catering is awful. I will agree with that. I think it has gone massively downhill, but that again is beyond the park's control. That is a group ride decision. They've said we want this external company to do it, and they're outsourcing. And outsourcing's fine to some extent, but I personally would try and keep as much in-house as I think. Even when you look at the wider scale, when you outsource things, it can often become more expensive in the long run. It's just a quick short-term like sticky plaster when you start outsourcing things to kind of cover a bigger problem.
The issue is, we know this, but the Jones family from Clitheroe, who visit Alton Towers every August, don't know about Aramark, and they don't know about what Merlin are doing with the catering. So when they turn up and they have a dreadful meal in the roller coaster restaurant or dreadful meal in Woodcutters or somewhere, and it's just not acceptable, they're not going to be like, oh, well, it's okay because Merlin have employed this subcontractor and this subcontractor. They're going to be like, Alton Towers were not good enough, sort of thing. And that's the issue they've got. Yeah,
because they're not going to look at who's running that part. No. They just see someone in a Towers uniform and they're like, right, that person works at Towers. Let's talk about some of the positives though, because I don't really want to end on a negative. And some of the really positive things that I've noticed this year at Towers is just small redesigns, such as we mentioned earlier as a negative, but the single rider queues are good at making sure, especially on Spinball, every seat is filled. And in fact, it makes the life easier for the ride host. Same on 13. It works really well on 13 to have that single rider queue because it needs a minimum amount of people on it. Yes. You need 18 people on it. And if you get two large groups, the whole system can shut down because they're not willing to split. And you need 18. It will not go if you haven't got 18 people on it. So, and I think bringing single rider back on 13, big hit because it will get used and it'll make the life easier for the ride team on there. And also we noticed when we did 13 towards the end of the year, after they've changed the merge point, so the ride access passes go a different way now. Even though they're going through the Tesla coil room, the throughput on it, they're getting 35-second dispatches on the trains, and it was just literally like we didn't even stop. We didn't even see the Tesla coil go off. We were going that quick through it.
I think I'll use this as an example in the first episode. Is that when I took my son Charlie on it, we didn't wait very long at all. And I think when you're taking a scared child on a roller coaster for the first time, what you don't want is a slow queue. You just want a queue that just zips through. Yeah. And I think now 13 is a great example of that. So to end on a positive, Nemesis Reborn, I think whether it was the right or wrong decision, I think they did a great job with it.
Oh, definitely.
I think the staff have been brilliant. And I think that the park has just generally been an improvement to visit compared to the years gone before it. Even little things like cleaning the walkways, cleaning the toilets more often, the staff in the shops are nice. I just think, generally speaking, as a whole, they've been better. Yeah. But that's not to say they don't have a lot of room for improvement, because they really do. And I always say that if Alton Towers is at its peak, everywhere else will raise the bar as well. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we can move on to the Q&A session that was actually meant to be in episode 1, but it lasted for the whole day pretty much of filming, so we split it up in 2. So we're going to move on to the Q&A session. All these questions were sent in early November or late October. So on to those. Stephen asks, not you, theme park engineers, do you think they're undervalued?
Okay, so they kind of work away in the background and no one really... they're not really seen unless like there's a problem. I do think that a lot of people forget like how much work goes into keeping a roller coaster going. It's a lot of effort. They put a lot into it. So yeah, I think that they do often get a bit overlooked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been privileged to see behind stuff at Pleasure Beach that most other people wouldn't see, and the amount of work that goes on to have the park ready for a season is absolutely phenomenal. When you look at, you've got 10 coasters, 4 trains, but most of them got 3-4 trains need stripping, rebuilding in about a 3-month window. You've got track work needs doing, you've got electrics need fixing, you've got motors need fixing, you've got cosmetic work needs doing. It's a lot of work to keep a park going.
Kelly asks, what ride would you remove from Alton Towers and what would you replace it with? Now, I'm not
going to give my stock answer to this one.
No, you're keeping out of this after last time. I'm going to throw this out there. I've said it before. I would put an Intamin multi-launch roller coaster, something like Two Tatis where Galactica is. Obviously, then you'd have to remove Rita and replace that with something because you're not going to have 2 launch coasters in the same park. So I'm sorry, Stephen. Yeah. Rita would be gone and replaced with something, but first Galactica would go and be replaced with something like Two Tatis.
Okay. Same site, Galactica. Yeah. I just think that it's had its run. Yeah. I feel like it's time for something new there. Now, I was going to say it's been multi-launch coasters like you. I'll try and think of something else quickly and it'll be a little bit...
No, I think it's fine. If that's what you go with,
yeah,
that's what you go
with. I generally think that's what we need in the UK. The only alternative I might
probably go down as potentially an RMC, a proper RMC, a hybrid coaster with lots of inversions. And...
You'd hear the lift hill and you toxicity.
But there is that. I was going to say, not without blowing another great big hole in the ground.
Yeah, it's not happening. Michael asks, and not this one, if you could erase your memory of one ride and experience it all over again for the first time, what would you choose? I would say the big one, but in the same position as I was when I did it the first time as a teenager who was curious about it, scared of it, but just went, F it, I'm doing it today. I don't care what anyone says, and I did it at the night. And for me, when I went down that first drop, it was like, I'm now a coaster enthusiast. It flicked a switch.
So for me, I'd probably say Apocalypse.
Yeah.
You were with me on that. We were quite scared. It's quite an intimidating ride when we first did that, and I remember thinking, am I actually going to go on this? I nearly bottled it. And to be fair, I'd love to relive just that day again. I thought it was a fantastic day.
Yeah. To throw a completely different answer out there as well, I always say this to Mark, I'd love to experience Tully's Shocktoberfest for the first time again and bottle that feeling of when we went in 2018. I'd never been to anything like it. I'd been to a few other independent events, and I went there just thinking it was going to be like one of them, and then the whole scale of it just blew my mind. I remember when we got back to the Travelodge and I was there Googling and going through dates and going, can I come back here in the next few weeks before it ends, because we went quite late in its run in 2018. So if we were talking about everything, I'd probably say that and that first ride on the big one, definitely. They're the two things that I always think, if I could experience those again, definitely. That first ride on Apocalypse, if I did it again and I got to experience that again as a 15-year-old again, I wouldn't be as potty-mouthed, that's for sure. Didn't do myself much justice there, I've got to be honest. I was scared, though. So, moving on. Daniel asks, which closed roller coaster attraction from around the world would you bring back if you could, and why? Jaws ride or Universal Orlando, because I never did it. Or an Open Desperado.
I was going to say Open Desperado.
I'd like to have another go on Vortex. That was the Beast's fault. I only did it once.
Right, last time we tried filming a video like this, and you mentioned that injury, we had to stop because we were laughing. So let's swiftly move on.
I'd say that Dodonpa is probably a big one for me that's got away. Like, I would have loved to have done Dodonpa. Just that launch just looked insane. So
Yeah.
Oh, Great American Scream Machine.
There we go.
Great adventure.
Callum asks, what are your opinions on the new large water park being built next to the Trafford Centre?
Yes.
Yes!
What water park? Sorry, I've not heard anything about this.
We've already got a water park near the Trafford Centre. It's called Sail Water Park.
Moving on.
No, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
We'll tell you about it later.
No, it sounds good.
Yeah. Don't worry, it's not outdoor.
Indoor water park.
Yeah. It is Manchester.
I was going to say it'd be a bit
Yeah,
chilly,
Manchester's
wouldn't it?
just one water park.
Yeah, pretty much. Jack asks, if Pleasure Beach could have any IP, what would you choose? For me, I'm not bothered. I wouldn't have one. I'd let Universal bring the IPs to the table.
I think the problem with IPs is they run the course.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, IPs are great if you're a movie company, I think, and you've got a movie theme park. But I think like Alton Towers and the smaller parks do better when they don't have an IP. Like Valhalla's incredible. Hex, the Legend of the Towers, incredible. I just don't think you need an IP to make a good ride.
I'll tell you what, I'll bring it up from a recent vlog. Daz Games. I just didn't get the point of it. So, but like I said on the vlog, I said, I think the actual attraction has got legs in some way, shape or form, just not the way it's
Just not a Scarefest attraction.
But I think the actual concept of the attraction has got legs in it.
But on that subject, if you look at the likes of Scarefest, Fright Nights, they've always done better when they've done their own creative ideas rather than using an IP for a maze, because they can do it. Merlin can do it as well as anyone when they want to. And for me, Fright Nights is always a good example of that.
Yeah,
and also,
I love the Amity Cove stuff.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a question from Mr. Scripted, John. What are your earliest childhood memories of Pleasure Beach, and what do you remember most fondly of those first few visits? I'm quite happy to start and say that I will always remember going on the Pleasure Beach Express on the big one's opening day, going round on the Pleasure Beach Express with my mum, and the big one went over our heads when it goes through the photo tunnel, and just the racket it made and the speed, and just seeing that silver train just go flying past. I just remember saying to my mum, what on earth's that? Because we'd been there like a few months earlier and it wasn't there. And then all of a sudden this big shiny red track with a silver train goes flying over, making this racket. And I always just remember sitting there and being like, what on earth's that ride? And my mum was like, that is the tallest ride in the world and your dad's in the queue for it. And I was like, okay, I'm sold.
The one that always sticks out to me was going on Grand National with my dad. And I'd have been probably, 10? Basically stood up on the double down, because this is the days of the old single lap bar, so you basically haven't got a lap bar, and there was nothing you were doing other than that you come so far out your seat you were physically stood up, not deliberately, but that's
how it felt.
That was Woody's were back in the day.
I'm a bit of a latecomer to Pleasure Beach, so I only really started going to Pleasure Beach with Coaster Force. Really was like the first time I properly kind of went there. So I think one of the first memories of it is that was it the Wow Weekend?
Yes.
Where it was absolutely you couldn't move. It was that chocker, but we still had a great day. So
February 2005, thrills and chills. What a day!
I do remember. I do remember before that I did go on a smaller trip, and the only thing I can remember from that is just looking at the big one, being stood in the station like. Am I doing that? Because you kind of had, back in it was like nighttime, and you look out the window and you had the chaser light going up and it just made it look so much bigger, and I was just like, but yeah, it was great. I loved it.
Cool. Andrew asks, are there any more plans for YEG events at Blackpool Pleasure Beach in the near future? At the minute, I would just say watch this space. We have a couple of plans in place for events next year. That's all I want to say at this point, because things do change so much with event planning, especially in the closed season, because you could get something all mapped out and then something might change. And then I never like to go too early with saying what we're going to be doing with events, because so often in the past I've said we're going to do something and then we've not been able to do it. And I don't like to disappoint people. I like to just be able to put the info out there when we've got it, basically. But I personally would love to do an event at Pleasure Beach, but I think we need to see what develops over the winter and when new things start appearing, and then maybe start making those plans. But for now, I think we'll definitely have one in the future. I just don't know if it'll be next year or the year after. But what I will say is that I'm excited to work with Blackpool Pleasure Beach going forward, definitely.
Before we move on to On the Break Run, I just want to explain why we were wearing different clothes in a different place for the Q&A session. Basically, when I got home after filming episode 2 and 3, I noticed that we've had a couple of issues with the camera during filming for both episode 2 and 3, which is why it's now just me and Stephen and not Mike. We are currently in Orlando in a hotel at Universal filming this, so just thought I'd clear that up in case anyone's wondering, like, why have you moved places for the video? So, we're now sat on the break run of whatever coaster you want to be on, stacking. Yeah. I wouldn't mind if it was Kingda Ka, but it's now gone, or it's going. Yeah. So what do you think about that?
Kingda Ka. I think it's really, really sad that we've lost such an iconic roller coaster. Kingda Ka was the king of coasters, essentially. It was the tallest, it was the fastest for, was it 20 years?
Yeah, near enough.
Nearly 20 years, which is like pretty much since I kind of got into coasters, essentially. Like I'd maybe been into coasters for maybe 2 years. It was the first really big coaster built while I was probably classed as like an enthusiast, essentially. So I think we both followed it quite closely, watching it going up and seeing what they were doing. And it was just a very exciting time to be into coasters. And to be fair, it was kind of the end of the coaster wars, because up until that point, everyone was wanting to build the next tallest, fastest. Let's see if we can get the biggest roller coaster. And then Kingda Ka came along, and then it kind of went more towards, I'd say, probably quality rides. So they're still good, but they have a lot more different elements to them. People started pushing the boundaries on what kind of inversions they can do and what kind of twists and turns they can put in. And I do think it's good in that aspect. But yeah, I'm sad it's going.
Yeah. Do you know what? When you mention that, it makes me think about when Cedar Point announced Maverick.
because obviously we'd had Top Thrill Dragster, we then got Kingda Ka, and then 2 years later, everyone's like, Cedar Point's getting another Intamin, they've got this brand new coaster coming, and then they announced the renders for Maverick, and you're going, what? Yeah. It's like, how have we gone from Kingda Ka to this? And I was kind of looking at it going, surely they're going for another record, but this is when they started using different launch technology, and having now been on Maverick a lot of times, I can see why they went with that decision, and that was basically a cultural shift in the industry from Cedar Point sort of saying, we're done with the coaster wars, we're now just going to build quality attractions, whatever height, whatever speed they are, as long as they're good coasters. But I remember at the time, like when Kingda Ka went in, I remember when it was announced that it was happening and there was all the talk about the bigger one. Yeah. Now there is sometimes suggestion that the big one was Kingda Ka. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. We'll never find out. I mean, Pleasure Beach were certainly looking at coasters at that height. I have seen comments saying Pleasure Beach should buy Kingda Ka. I think we're long past that now. Yeah. I think if they're going to build anything that height, they'll go with LSM technology. Yeah. I'm really sad about it. I think for me, the saddest thing is I've obviously been on it. I went on it in 2019, and I actually didn't think it was anywhere near as good as Top Thrill Dragster. And if anything, I'd go as far as saying that I actually thought Stealth was better than it. But I just think that the way they've handled it was awful. I feel like you had the world's tallest roller coaster, and you just closed it without any warning. Yeah. That is, in my opinion, that is shockingly bad. That is such a bad way to deal with it. Yes, I get they didn't want people nagging them and saying, why are you closing it? Just put out a statement, we're closing it for X, Y, Z reason. You've got 6 weeks to come and ride it. And I think people would have flocked there. It would have been like its opening year. I think people would have gone from far and wide to ride it. Those that hadn't been on it, they'd have gone far and wide to ride it. And I think for me, it's annoying because we centred a whole event around that ride for next June. Now, there's 80-odd roller coaster credits that everyone's going to get to do next June. But a lot of people on the trip have never been on Kingda Ka. A lot of them missed out on Top Thrill 2 years ago. And it's like, it's literally history is repeating itself, but with Kingda Ka. And it's really frustrating for me as an organiser that, one, I had like literally no idea this was going to happen. And then secondly, when I'm emailing the park and saying we want an ERT on this, a behind the scenes tour on this, and they're saying, yeah, we might be able to accommodate it. At no point did they say that we're removing 5 attractions.
You know you're going to get a nickname. The Terminator. The way they've handled it is shocking, and it's not just Kingda Ka though, is it? There's the Green Lantern,
Kilimanjaro,
parachute ride, which has been there 40 years, I believe. It's one of
quite iconic for them.
Yeah, and the thing is, there isn't any more of those in the world. That's the last one, so it's a shame to see that go. I know I missed out on it in 2019 for doing Kingda Ka and a lot of the other rides. We had limited time, so I did every coaster there though, which was fantastic to do. But I just think the way not giving people the opportunity to go and have that last ride kind of reminds me of the Wild Mouse.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think that was one of the worst things to kind of wake up to, was seeing a bulldozer essentially ripping it apart, and I can understand why that went.
The thing with the Wild Mouse, the difference is it was closed. Yeah. It, like, at the time it closed, it had been shut for 3 months. Yeah. So I think people kind of expected it. Yeah. But it was still a shock. Whereas this one is a real shock because it's been operational. Like, I think the thing with Top Thrill Dragster is it actually had an incident, so it had to close. Yeah. So you kind of look at it and go, well, I get it. I get why that's happened. Whereas with this one, it's just like, what are you doing? I mean, it would have been its 20th anniversary. Yeah. Surely you would at least run it until September and be like, this is your last chance to come and ride it in its 20th anniversary.
Yeah. No, I agree. I do think it's disappointing.
Yeah. I've heard and read, though, that people actually within Great Adventure are really not happy with the way it's been handled because it's basically been a decision that has been forced upon them.
Oh, from the group level, it's a shame. It is a real shame.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good and well saying we're doing record-breaking water rides here, there and everywhere and other things, but it's the tallest roller coaster in the world. Give people some notice. I think it's a poor show. Anyway, let's talk Intamin. You've now was sat in Orlando at the time of filming. You met them yesterday. Yeah, I did. And we like them anyway. Yeah, but I know now that you're the biggest fanboy ever of Intamin.
Intamin are just the best roller coaster manufacturing company in the world. but it's not, even before meeting them, whenever they build a new ride like Tutatis and Gotham City, I need to be there because I just know I'm going to get a quality ride attraction. Especially, I was quite skeptical of Velocicoaster when it first got, and you remember me saying I think it ruins the skyline, but I love it. It's one of the best roller coasters. It's actually my best coaster. It's my favourite coaster out there. So
I said it was going to be the American Icon,
but it is not.
and that, I like Icon, but I genuinely thought Universal were putting in an Intamin version of Icon, but with some Jurassic Park theming.
And the thing is, like, they just seem to have such fantastic roller coasters. Like at Gotham City, I was again like quite skeptical over it, and you said, "Steve, no, you need to come and ride."
Well, the thing is, I was well excited to go on it because I'd just been on Velocicoaster, and then they start putting that up, and it's like, oh, it looks like the same. It's got similar elements. It's got similar trains. The paint job's the same. I was like well excited. I thought this is going to be the same coaster. Then they started testing it, and I was like, that looks rubbish. Because it was going through the elements really slow, and I was just like, I was messaging people that I know in Madrid and going, is it really that slow? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's not going to be very good. And then I went on the media night and I was just blown away by how good it was. It was just, it is sensational.
It is. And I was thinking over the top hat, because they've got the trims up there.
Yeah.
It goes quite slow over.
Yeah, it does.
But when you ride it, you know why.
Yeah.
Because that drop going down is nuts.
It is basically like a dive coaster.
Yeah.
With insane airtime, like even with it going over so slow,
The thing is as well, you've got Tiger in Finland.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's one of them that is universally accepted as being very good, but I don't think enough people go and do it, Stephen. And this Tutatis, which is obviously everybody knows about, it's a great coaster.
Yeah.
And they were telling us yesterday, they couldn't tell us where, but they said they've got loads of coasters on the way, didn't they? So we were just like, right, let's go.
Plenty on the way. But it's quite good seeing some of the concepts of trick track they seem to be going into at the moment, where they can now have elements that can really enhance the ride experience of drop tracks that don't just drop. They can like go back up again. A bungee trick track, I think they were calling it, and it was just so cool to see like what concepts they can put on. But it's not just what they can do with the roller coasters, but what they can do with the flume rides as well, which was quite impressive. And they're saying pretty much all that technology can go onto a flume attraction. And we've already seen a Rapids ride, which has taken some of that technology on board. So
next year.
I do. I think it might be a bit scary though.
Too scary for Steve.
I thought River Quest was pretty crazy, but it seems like Intamin. No, it's not. I can't remember who it is now.
My shocking knowledge on that ride, but I really can't remember who made that one. I've not been on it.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know who's done that one. But it is quite a weird boat though, because it seems to flex. Yeah. Like the seats seem to not. It's not like a solid boat, but like the seats are kind of.
I need to do it.
Have you not done it?
No. The issue is I always go in January.
Well, you need to go outside of January. You need to go in summer when it's.
I am not going there when it's busy. Can't think of
it was busy when we were there.
Can't think of anything worse. That place is not good when it's busy. It's awful to wait in those queues because they just don't move. Yeah. I've been quite lucky. I've done it really, really quiet days, and I've done some really unfortunately busy days. And the Taran Cattle Pen of Doom is not one for the summer. No. I can't imagine that's very pleasant in the heat.
No.
If they get heat there.
Well,
I don't know what it's like in the summer.
I think it does get quite toasty out there.
Yeah.
The first time I did Taran, it was probably a 3-hour queue, and we just seemed to go into like there's like a back area where they have these weird planters like quite tall.
The Cattle Pen of Doom.
And I just stayed in there for like what seemed an eternity. It just didn't move, and I don't know why it didn't move, because you see the ride running with people on it like constantly.
It doesn't move. It's awful. It is awful because it is a throughput machine. It's like, why am I not moving?
I don't know why I wasn't moving.
No, agreed. So I think that is us for this podcast, episode 2. Obviously, we've got no mic, which means it's going to be a shorter episode in general. No competition round, but we'll be back in the UK filming studio at some point. But episode 3, you might see some dodgy outfits for that one. You want to do the outro?
Oh, I'm rubbish at it. I'll be worse than you. hit that thumbs up button.
So, yeah, you're more enthusiastic than me.
Thumbs up button, please, guys. There we go.
What Steve said. So, so if you have enjoyed episode 2 of the Dispatch podcast here on Your Experience Guide, please do hit the like button. It's a little thumbs up below. Please comment, please subscribe. Many thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.